Kia ora, you're tuned in with Raglan Radio. My name is Dallas Mihinui. We have a pleasure to have a guest that's well known to our radio show and our podcast. We have Wiri from You Be the Judge podcast, and he's here to talk to us about RBE. I like that acronym RBE. I just found that out today. But RBE, resource-based economy. If you don't remember, he spoke about that, touched on that on our last interview and last conversation that we had, and yeah, it'd be good to find out his insight and stuff that he's learned over the years to talk about a resource-based economy and what that encompasses and how we can jump on board with the kaupapa. But welcome back to the podcast, brother.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. How have you been anyway? How's things?
Good. Things are good over here in Vietnam. People are kind of back to normal, going to work and school, they've kind of like over this whole crisis thing over here. So it's good to see people making a living and back to their kind of normality without any stress, I guess. Not sure how it is back there in New Zealand though.
Yeah, it's I mean, like, we're all back to level 1. I believe Auckland's still up in level 2, but for the most part, yeah, it seems to be honest, it just seems like a huge meme these days. A bit of a joke, to be honest with you. But yeah. But anyway, bro, I've got a few questions for you, if you don't mind me asking. Just
Cool.
touch on the resource-based economy corridor that we're going to have today. I guess the first question that came through was, what is a resource-based economy, and how does it differ from other governing theories currently in practice today around the world?
Good question, bro. Good question. So, step one, let's look at what an economy is supposed to mean, its definition. Economy is supposed to mean thrifty management, savings. Actually, the Greek meaning of economy means management of a household. And when you look at the current system we have today, it isn't really managed that well. It's like you've seen all the poverty in place, you've seen all these different problems around the world, the waste that we have. And so things are completely counter to what we actually practice today. So all you hear about in the news is economic growth, and that growth is based on what they call cyclical consumption, which is constantly buying things and using resources. Constant consumption on a finite planet doesn't sound very thrifty to me. It actually sounds quite suicidal, to be honest. So our entire social system is based on an archaic view, a traditional notion that was established a long time ago. And the political system is an extension of what I call feudalism, and the economic system is a socially, what do we call it, Darwinistic notion that there will be, our entire social system is based on this archaic view that was established a long time ago, and there won't be enough to go around. So that's what this system, basically the monetary system, is saying, that there's actually going to be not enough to go around. So therefore we have mechanisms built in to maintain scarcity, and artificial scarcity is a big one. We have 3 billion people living on less than $2 a day, which is crazy. So we look at the consequences of the system, we step back and we think about what a true economic system might be, and the train of thought will be established. A true economy is defined in Greek, as I said before, the management of our household. And our household is the earth. If we look at the planet, and our household is not managed efficiently or sustainably at present. So a resource-based economy was coined by futurist Jacques Fresco. from the Venus Project. I got to spend some time with Jacques Fresco around 2009 when he came to New Zealand. We took him around New Zealand and spent a bit of time with him and asked him a few questions about a resource-based economy. And he basically said that a resource-based economy is a system in which all goods and services are available without the use of money, credit, barter, or any other system of debt or servitude. So you don't need money, you don't even need barter. So all resources become the common heritage of all the inhabitants on the planet, not just a select few. And this is based on the fact that the earth is abundant with plentiful resources, and our practices of rationing those resources through monetary methods is pretty much irrelevant and counterproductive to our survival today. So an RBE really makes use of one major thing, that we have technically outgrown our old world modes of operations, and all of our old world isms no longer hold relevance, like capitalism, socialism, communism. All those are what I would call representatives of an old age. We are past all that now, and we have no need to revisit them anymore. And the parameters have changed, but we're still playing the same old game, throwing out the same old accusations and assumptions despite the new conditions. So this resource-based economy is designed to use what we call the scientific method for human concern. So it's not based on superstition, it's not based on any religious thing, it's based on science for human concern as a means to address the biological and quality of life needs for the entire human species. And we do it on a sustainable, abundant, and ecological sound level. Now, when we address those needs, our amazing innovations that have some serious consequences with the economic models we use today. So with the scientific method, problems could be solved without anyone having to decide what solutions will be, because solutions would arrive. And what I mean by that, solutions would arrive in terms of if you use a calculator and you put in the right information, like 1 + 1 = 2, it comes out with the answer you want. So there's a term for that, and it's quite technical. It's called logical analysis of situational variables. So what it pretty much means, bro, is that a resource-based economy would use factual-based information inputs, and it'll arrive at decisions, just like a calculator. So you put in the right information, the calculator will come out with that factual information, the factual result. And that's pretty much how a resource-based economy would be. It would be very, what would be the word? Not subjective. What's the opposite one to subjective? Oh, I forgot. But so it's not going to be. It's not going to be subjective. So it'll be based pretty much on facts. And so, what does that all mean? Well, firstly, biological needs. Things like air, food, water, sleep, medical care. These are the things people need to exist. Without these, people cannot live. Then there's quality of life needs like shelter, clothing, education, energy, transportation, and communication. These are the things that make life easier than just bare minimum existence. So there's a sidebar to these, and that is that's just as important, but not as direct. These are indirect needs. I call these necessities for a sound mind and social state. Things like personal purpose, recreation, community, love, passion, hobbies, pursuits, families, friends, colleagues. Sometimes people forget about evolutionary biology, especially with regards to the fact that humans are independent, yet we coexist together. And we need each other to live. Now, mankind has never been so excessively independent that we can do everything alone and survive. If we tried that, would die off, plain and simple. And we live in communities, and we have friends and families for a reason. So I think people thrive on communities. People thrive on living together and being socialistic. anyway, the social the operating systems that give us all our scientific and technical advancements, which is the scientific method, follows a specific set of rules and checks ways to help get rid of bias and waste and get right to solving problems using sustainable long-term solution sets that come from scientific and technical knowledge. Now, science constantly pokes at itself, trying to break down its own understandings, hoping to find better understandings. In the same way, the resource-based economy is an emergent-style system that will constantly update itself as we learn, unlike an establishment-style system that holds on to things out of some nostalgic devotion, no matter how out of date that may be. So what I'm saying is a resource-based economy would be emergent, which means that new information that comes to it would be always updated to that information. So it doesn't matter. So now our understandings about, let's say, computers will get updated into maybe 2 years' time to new understandings about computers. So we need to live with the current information. The system that we currently have, a monetary-based system, was based hundreds of years ago, so it's not updated to present day knowledge. So there's a lag between knowledge, which is why you're seeing all these problems. So we call that emergence. So we need to be updated to the actual information as we have it today, not based on information back hundreds of years ago. And then you get this notion of people saying, "Oh, I don't want technology running my life," but not to be rude, that's pretty much a naive statement. Humans have been inventing technologies to make their life easier since the dawn of man. When it gets too warm in your house, do you run to the window and use a hand crank as a fan to cool it down? Of course not. You have a piece of technology called a thermostat or an air conditioner, and that can read the temperatures, and it will automatically turn on your air conditioner. And that's a technology, and those used to cool down your house. And I can go down a list of technologies that provide energy you need to run all of that, but I won't. And there's enough sustainable clean energy potential on this planet to basically cover every human being and more at a first world level. So when the classic old world energy is a multi-billion-dollar politician, so people are looking at all these multi-billion-dollar politicians and businessmen, and it's no wonder why this world is going crazy, because in a resource-based economy, what I'm saying is that everyone would have the lifestyle of a billionaire. So you'd have access to resources, you'd have access to the basic necessities of life. There would be no holding back. And RBE is about maximizing the potential of our natural resources so that things we need to live on are made to be used sustainably and long-lasting as possible, and at the very minimum are easy to upgrade or recycle when we advance past their use. We don't do that today. In today's world, it's not profitable to build something that can last 200 years or 1,000 years. People try and make things so they break down easily. We call that planned obsolescence. So that's why you get all the waste of all the different phones and all that. Or you have a warranty, only a 6-month warranty, obviously, because they know it's going to break down in a certain period of time. So that's a lot of waste of resources. A total waste of resource. And you have all those, what do they call them, dollar store knockoffs. So you got all the $2 shops and all those. They got heaps of stuff that pretty much just junk. There are some cool stuff that lasts a little while. Or good for presents at Christmas time or whatever. So you get all those natural resources that go into making all of this cheap stuff, even cheap cell phones. And it's just a whole waste, and that's what we call it. We call it planned obsolescence. And and it's gravitating toward towards wastage and wasting resources on a magnitude that's really, I would say, unconscionable. And we don't have a resource availability issue. We actually have a resource use issue. This is also accelerated by this notion of competition rather than collaboration. What I mean by that, bro, is that you look at, say, Apple. They're trying to make the best phone of the time now, and then you look at Samsung. They're trying to make the best phone of the time now. But wouldn't it be actually better if both of them combined together to make the best phone together, eliminating all the wastage?
It's
Collaboration is what I'm talking about.
it's ironic. The couple of videos that you sent me. He was Peter Joseph. Is that his name?
Yeah, Peter Joseph. Yeah, I sent you a couple of those videos.
He spoke about if it wasn't for IPs, people with intellectual property, then a lot of that stuff would be void, really, because all it really is just it's competition for the consumer, really, when you think about it. Apple, Samsung, who are they? Yeah. But then there's a trickle effect that comes down from there, and that'll be who's got the best phone, and then that phone's only lasts for X amount of years, and that becomes what you're talking about the wastage and stuff like that. But yeah,
but exactly, isn't it? Yeah. And what I'm saying is collaboration is way better than competition, and in a funny way, bro, we do that in the system. We're actually collaborating, but the way in which it's done indirectly. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, you use YouTube, you want to learn something. Like, if I want to be the top gamer at Street Fighter, even though it's a competitive game, I can go to YouTube and watch someone that's played a character of Street Fighter and learn what he's done to try and make me better. So in a way, we're collaborating, but in an indirect way. So it's still proof that collaboration is more, what would be the word, more productive than actually competition. There's actually a guy I saw a video of. His name is Alfie Coin, and he talks about it too, and he proves how competition is far more useless than collaboration is. And if we collaborate more better, we can actually not only save resources, but we can actually develop things more faster. And this is getting back to that oneness mentality, that we are more powerful together when we think together and when we do things together. And there's one thing I also want to talk about today also is this marketing and advertising in a monetary system. And today you have marketing and advertising that they work very hard on psychological, what I call psychological profiling. So they're dedicated to convincing people to buy things that they don't need, psychological profiling. Oh, look, there's some girls there, let's try and market to them bags, or let's try and market to them to go shopping, or with money that they don't have, because they now feel insecure about themselves because they don't have the latest gadget or the latest greatest whatever. So it kind of like puts people into this position of, I need to have the latest phone to be seen that I'm with the in group, or I'm with the, it's a status thing. So there's all these psychological conditioning that goes into this monetary system that really has a psychological effect on people. And Peter Joseph, funnily enough, created the Zeitgeist movies, but the main movie that I'm talking from today, like the resource-based economy, is Zeitgeist Moving Forward. And I really recommend people to watch Zeitgeist Moving Forward, because in the first part of the movie, there are a number of doctors on there, Dr. Gabor Mate, Robert Sapolsky, that actually talk about the psychological effects of the monetary system, and how even like violence, how violence is created in our social system. And he looks at, and they look at the root causes. What is the root cause of it all? And it's actually the system itself. But people don't look at the root cause. People think that they try and blame it on things like, oh, it's human nature. That's a big one that people say. It's human nature that we do all these different things. And so, yeah, I recommend people to look at that Zeitgeist Moving Forward. With all that said, the main reason why the RBE, I will call resource-based economy RBE, is even viable today is dominantly based on our technical and scientific advancement, specifically in the realm of computers, robotics, over the last, I would say, 20 to 30 years. And yes, technological unemployment is real, whether people want to admit it or not. Why use humans who require breaks, lunch, or that can get sick, or have families that they want to spend time with? So technological unemployment is a huge thing, and what technological unemployment is basically the introduction of automation to replace people. And in a monetary system, people will feel very threatened and very scared of that. Obviously, because you need to make money to survive, you need to have your purchasing power. But in a resource based economy, when you have access to all the resources you need for your survival, you won't need to work. You wouldn't need to work. Instead, you would what we call contribute, much like a volunteer. So you'd volunteer your time to help the system, to help
Right.
your community, to help your society. It's pretty much like going to a marae, bro. So if you go back to a marae, you get in the kitchen, you peel those potatoes. Why? Because you're a family. You're all working together, and that's what community is. That's what family is. So we haven't reached that global family point yet, but that's what a resource-based economy is. It's getting back to that notion that we are family, our planet is our home, and we need to work together. We need to come together and work as a family. And so if you have a more efficient operating system for the people on this planet, it will really reduce the need for human labor. You won't need to work, making it impossible for people to make money, because in a resource-based economy, you wouldn't need to make money because there is no money to be made. And the reward for you in a resource-based economy is you'd get your basic access to the necessities of life, and you'll be able to do the things you want to do. You'll be able to go, and if you have a passion, you'll be able to go and do that passion, whether it's traveling, whether it's art, whether it's music, spending family time. These are things that I want to move more into in the next question. And yeah.
No, worries, right? Yeah. So next question would be how can you explain a couple of ways of like the common Joe blogs, how that would directly benefit from the implementation of a resource-based economy?
First, firstly, no bills, no taxes, drastically reduced crime, since 90% of all crime is based on money, no financial problems, abundant access to food, shelter, clothing, transport, anywhere in the world. Actually, it'll be to the point where there'll be no borders, bro. There'll be actually no borders. We wouldn't need borders anymore. Energy, unlimited free access to education, and giving the Joe Blog the ability to do exactly what he wants to do with his life, knowing that his choice of work won't have any impact on his high standard of living. Joe can now live to work instead of work to live, which is what we're actually doing in a monetary system. We're actually working to live. In a resource-based economy, we are living to work. So this will give the Joe blogs basically the ability to pursue his own personal passion, whether it's, as I said before, art, science, entertainment, and a whole bunch of different what we call incentives and new things to think about, new passions basically. So now Joe is a human being pretty much that lives to better himself, to enrich himself, to to learn, and instead of being the slave to money and a slave to debt, and and having this notion of a day-to-day hope that tomorrow might be better. I mean, people today now, they look forward to Fridays. They hate Mondays. In this working age, and I tell you what, there's a huge psychological impact on people. they love Fridays. Why? Because it's so stressful working, working your guts out, and don't get me wrong, man, I've worked since I was 8 years old. My old man told me, hey, you get your ass out there and you work, you do that milk run, you make that money. So I was brought up, it was ingrained into me to work. And it does have some social, some psychological impacts on you. So what I wanted to talk about is, I'll just show a diagram to the peeps, which is about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm not sure if you know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but
I'm aware of it.
when you look at Maslow's hierarchical needs, you will see most of humanity is stuck in the bottom two levels. I call these levels survival mode, meaning they're trying to work to make money, to buy resources to survive. Now, this takes up our time, our energy in this day and age, and this is way outdated and obsolete. And we have the resources and know-how now to make resources abundantly accessible for everyone at a high standard of living, and for free, so we can get our time back and pursue our passions, eventually elevating us to the higher levels of what we call in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-actualization. I mean, how many people out there, or someone who goes to work at a job and they don't really like it, they just pay their bills, but then they come home, spend time and money on a hobby they truly enjoy? Hardly anyone does. In an RBE, that hobby would actually be what they do all day. And that would be they would be able to get the education necessary to be experts in that hobby, which in the long run would benefit themselves and the society at the same time. So if you look at that Maslow's hierarchical needs, you'll see the first level down the bottom is biological and psychological needs, which is like food, sleep, water. The next level is security, health, finances, safety. And then the third one is friendship, intimacy level, and connections. Now, some people trying those first 2 or 3 levels, a lot of people are in. But then the top 2 levels, which are esteem, and esteem is respect, status, recognition, strength. And the top one is self-actualization, which is basically meeting your full potential in your life. Those are hardly pursued by people. And if they are pursued by people, bro, it's because they A, have money, or B, they have time. So people are trapped in those bottom levels. So what a resource-based economy does, it eliminates those 3 bottom levels to actually elevate everyone into the top 2 levels. And by that way, people can pursue the things they love: recreation, time, studying about other aspects of life like space or the planet, or research, art. I don't know, what hobbies are you good at, bro, that you might want to do in a resource-based economy? Travel?
Definitely, I love the show. Art, music. But just touching on what you said in the first question, you spoke about phones and I think from memory it was the updating of phones and technology. Uh, isn't that isn't that amazing that you can fathom that? Like, I 100% know what you're talking about, and even with people's passions and stuff that they're good at, is sharing that information so that it's shared at a rate so that it's real time. Is that pretty much what you're saying? Instead of waiting 10 or so 15 so years, and then you're being told about something that's been
Exactly.
updated.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I think now there are groups out there that are inventing technology or hoarding technology and using things like copyrights to hold those technologies, or even shelving their technology for their own benefit,
yeah, yeah.
to create a dominance over groups of people out there, in a way sabotaging, I would say, humanity's evolvement, humanity's learning and access to these technologies. And so I think that in a resource-based economy, there'd be no hoarding, there'll be no holding back, because you wouldn't need to. The major thing that a resource-based economy eliminates, that a monetary system has, is the reward mechanism. So in a monetary system, you get rewarded for your behavior, your corruptive behavior. You get rewarded, you get paid, you get a house, you get, resources over other people. So in a resource-based economy, there is no reward. Why? Because you have access to all the necessities you need.
Exactly.
You have those accesses. So the incentives change. And because the incentives change, the behaviors change. And as I alluded to before, if you look at the first part of that Zeitgeist Moving Forward movie, you'd see the doctors, and they talk exactly about what I'm talking about. You change the environment, you change people's behaviors. And this is scientifically proven. And that's what that first part of the movie talks about. How people are brought up a certain way of thinking, then actually their behaviors will actually become how they've been brought up and thought, their upbringing. If they're brought up in a system that's based on scarcity, based on violence, guess what? That person's going to be violent. If they're brought up in a system where the system takes care of the people, that it's trying to push people to their full potential, to be smarter, to support and collaborate with one another, guess what? Your behaviors are going to actually replicate that. And so this is what a resource-based economy totally is. Totally different to what we have now. And so getting back to that question, you talked about, the benefits of the Joe blogs. Man, he's going to have awesome benefits. He would not have to pay any bills. He'd have his standard of living would be that of a billionaire. So you'd have all the accessible necessities of life. And if you can imagine how a resource-based economy would be, there'd be like centers set up, like food access centers. So you wouldn't need money to buy anything. You just go to a food center, you get what food you need. It's what you need, not what you want, which is totally different. If you need a vehicle, you use a vehicle, you drop the vehicle wherever you are, someone else can jump in it and use it, for example. And we're getting that way now. We've got like what we call the sharing economy. So we've got things like Airbnb now, where people are using their homes, and I mean we're using money, but it's that share. They call it their sharing economy. And then you've got Uber that's been set up, and a few other places a few other things that are set up where people can use these resources now. So it's kind of in a transitional state.
The e-bike, the e-bike's huge here.
E-bikes, exactly. So all those things are slowly coming into, it's trying to make this giant leap, but what's blocking it is the actual monetary system itself. So that's something that we need to look at. So the normal Joe blogs would actually benefit hugely from a resource-based economy, to the point where his behaviors would change. And the whole idea, bro, in a resource-based economy is to make our children smarter. Let's make the children smarter than us. And if we can do that,
sounds good, bro.
We can
we
can thrive. So
Okay, bro. I've got another question here for you. I've got a few if you don't mind, but
no worries.
How would you convince those fearful of a one world government to accept the basic tenets of resource-based economy?
Okay, so this one's quite easy, and I kind of alluded to it before. An RBE system would drastically reduce and all but eliminate government as we know it. A resource-based economy is about open source sharing of knowledge and information to all people all over the world, such that nothing is held back for differential advantage. The key word here, bro, is transparency. So large government represents a failure to address the needs of the people. A law is a poor solution by uneducated people to try and solve a problem on paper, without actually trying to solve a problem in reality. As an example, laws against drunk driving, for instance. So why not use automated cars to drive people home? Instead, we have a law, you know what I mean, that that's been put in place. And why can't you use that automated car? That it'll have GPS, laser guidance, and sensors, and computer systems to get people around without any incident at all, ever. And I mean, you can Google the autonomous car now, and you'll see how far that actually has come. And your transport would be totally efficient, and it would remove human error as well from the picture. So then you could eliminate insurance companies. So when you look at
Yeah.
it, when you look at it, a properly run society does not need some big brother over their shoulder, a government or a corporation making sure they are behaving. An actual proper society will create a living condition that makes it stupid to steal and pointless to swindle and irrational to fight over that which is abundantly available to everyone. So people have access to those resources,
Yeah.
as I mentioned before. This eliminating the reward mechanism, and that reward mechanism is what we have in a monetary system. As I said before, people get rewarded in a monetary system for corruption, for parasiting off other people's energy and ideas. That's why you've got a boss and an owner, and you've got employees. You're actually parasiting off their energy to do work for you, to progress you forward. Um,
Not the
it's
energy vampires. Not
Yeah,
the energy
I think you mentioned that today. The energy vampires. I pretty much think it's very similar. You're parasiting off the energy there in a monetary system. So if you had access to all the basic necessities of life, your behaviors would change. And as I said, this is scientifically proven. You can look up the doctors, Robert Sapolsky, Gabor Mate, in the first part of Zeitgeist Moving Forward movie. And you wouldn't need to make profit from selling anything or from taking advantage of others, as there'd be no money in a resource-based economy. You'd have a high standard of living, which
exactly.
which would create new incentives and create new outlooks and your behaviors as well. So the monetary system creates a conditioning aspect that rewards ego, which stems from what we call artificial scarcity and ruthless competition. And we're kind of born into the system. So and it's what I call, now these are technical words, sorry for all the technical words, but you can Google them later. But it's called psychological intergenerational programming. So you're born into the system. Your parents actually said, okay, you need to go to school, you need to go to work, and then the cycle repeats. You have kids, so you get your kids, you tell your kids, okay, you need to go to school, you need from school, you need to go get a job. So it's this intergenerational psychological programming that the system has got us to do, and we've taken part in it, so we've been doing that. And
So true,
yeah.
though. So true.
So also note that science has been misled down a road where it becomes a veil for profiteering. Once again, another symptom of the monetary reward mechanism. So people are using science to profit off it in a monetary system, when actually it should be used for the betterment of everybody. And I want to go back to one thing in a resource-based economy, because this was something people said to me, that what happens if I steal 10 cars in a resource-based economy? And I would go back to what I just mentioned before, is that you wouldn't need to, because you'd have access to all the necessities of life. Your behaviors would change. You wouldn't need to go and steal 10 cars and sell them, because there's actually no money in a resource-based economy system.
Yeah.
People's lives would drastically change if they had access to all the necessities of life. I mean, what would you do if you had all the necessities of life, and you wouldn't need to work anymore? What would you actually do? So this is something I actually tell people. What would you actually do? And most people said they'll spend time with the family, which is a given. Obviously you're going to spend more time with your family. But if you have your own personal pursuits, what would it be? Maybe to teach people
Yeah.
things, maybe invent. I mean, I'd love to travel. I'd love to travel more. And I wouldn't
Yeah.
mind actually doing some research, travel and then collaborating research on different areas and things like that. I'd love to do that. So yeah, that's that question.
I also think too, bro. Like with, and I 150% agree with everything that you just said. with I also think even with the COVID lockdown, when it was level 4, everyone was locked down. I think that was a good time and place for everyone to reflect about what's important. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, and what's going on in the world. It was like pretty much everyone had like had a pause button, and within that pause button, I mean, there was definitely stuff out there that was in the media that was incorrect and definitely stretched. But then there was also things there for people to research for their own personal well-being. And yeah, bit of a shame we couldn't have these up and going and put out there to the masses. But
exactly.
yeah, bro. I've got another question here, but it's one like this. Many people suggest that overpopulation could ultimately uh, lead to a collapse of human industrial civilization. How would a resource-based economy manage rising population levels and at the same time ensure that there are enough resources to go around?
Yeah, this is a popular question and a really good question. Now, the overpopulation issue is one many people think they are experts on, but the real truth is that people don't understand one vital point when it comes to overpopulation. First world nations do not overpopulate. Now, the fertility rate of nations with a good standard of living, like medical care, educational systems, etc., roughly maintain what we call a 2-to-1 ratio balance. Conversely, the fertility rate of poor regions of the world that have little to no medical care options or little to no educational options have a ratio of 7-to-1. So the statistics on this are easy enough to find online. So if you look at that, if you have a higher standard of living, if you have access to medical care, the necessities of life, education, you get to a point where you don't need to actually have babies, more than if you were in, say, third world countries or poor countries. There seems to be, I don't know what it is, the psychological thing where if you're in a poor country, you need to produce more so that when they grow up, they can actually make more money so you can survive. It's a survival thing. So that,
Wow.
yeah, so you can find that online. And why is this the case? Well, it's pretty simple, really, is what I just said. When you have a good life, you are busy advancing yourself. You know that your children are all but certain to survive past the age of 5. Then you simply have less kids. You don't have to have 10 kids and hope some of them survive to take care of you when you get older. And I think that's the mentality a lot of the um, people in these low socioeconomic regions in poor countries are at. However, there are no safety nets in the impoverished world. There is only stress, strife, famine, lack of education, lack of medical care, and severe mistreatment of women as well. And, you know, in a resource based economy, the entire planet will be at a high level of standard of living, even better than what the first world has even now. So the issue of overpopulation goes out the window when you realize that the actual causes are, and you see that a resource based economy would passively remove those causes by default. So implementing a resource based economy, bro, would actually remove by default overpopulation just by its way of giving people this high standard of living. And
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Mean brother. Bro, another question came through. Explain how a global resource-based economy would remove those currently seated at the top, oh, seated atop the artificial social pyramid.
yep. So, this is another question people talk about too. I would not use the word remove. No one would be removed. They would just be made irrelevant. We give people power in today's world because we're saddled with enough on our plates as it is. It's hard enough to survive thanks to this system. Now, some people have gamed the system and used that, I would say, gift of power to put themselves in a position where they probably think they are gods And I think I know you know what I mean.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
and in the meantime, as the world moves towards a better way of life, those in control will find that their influence is eroding, their power is fading, and they will become a footnote in the history books. When people are educated, they cannot be controlled so easily. When people are informed, um, people become more, their perceptions start opening up, and so they don't become more easily controlled. When people have open access to knowledge and information, they cannot be controlled so easily. And when people see themselves as an active member of a community, local or global, working together, they cannot be controlled so easily. So we are in an outdated, obsolete monetary system that has thrived on what I would call divide and conquer. I mean, you've seen this throughout colonization, bro. You've seen this throughout history. And if we are to thrive into the future, we need to come together as one global family. Also, one other thing about those seated at the top is if we continue on this path of what I call cyclical consumption, this constant buying and wastage, and using up our resources recklessly, polluting our air, polluting our water, or even radiating our planet through nuclear war. Let's hope that it doesn't get to that. Then those seated at the top will not be exempt as well. So they will also feel the effects of the majority. They will also be in an irradiated planet. They will also, they may have the underground bunkers, uh, but even then, an earthquake won't protect them.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so as I said, they are not exempt from the effects of what would possibly happen if we don't come up with a solution similar to that of a resource-based economy. Now, this surely is a new shift of thinking and brings in a whole new paradigm shift of conscious thought, but it's the future that our tamariki would excel and experience their full potential. And unfortunately, this monetary system we are in will never change. Corruption, elitism, greed, pollution, consumerism will never change in the system, and we are heading for an early extinction if we don't. And in the words of Roxanne Meadows, she says the shape and solutions of the future depends totally on the collective efforts of all people working together. And
I
so,
like that. I like that one. That's dope.
yeah, so pretty much a resource-based economy is global in operation, but local in implementation. And our problems today are enormous and global in their scope and impact. They cannot be solved by any one nation. The concept of common good is global, but local in implementation. So we must start with what we have in common. All social systems, I would say, regardless of political philosophy, religious beliefs, or social customs, ultimately depend on natural resources. They all depend on natural resources, clean air, clean water, arable land, and the technology and personnel to maintain a high standard of living. This can be accomplished through the intelligent and humane application of science and technology, as I was saying before, and using what we call a global systems approach. And when money and self-interest are outgrown, interaction between nations won't be based on self-interest, but on mutual interest, or what we call social interest, bro. Social interest. So this approach will help eliminate artificial boundaries that separates people. So basically, things like borders will be gone. In a resource-based economy, you wouldn't need borders anymore. You wouldn't have to need borders, so you could go anywhere. And that's the stage of actually a global civilization. I mean, today you don't see a bird in China going, oh, I want to go to Vietnam. I need to go get my passport. No, no, it's just a stupid human. What would you call it? It's just a human fabrication or a human illusion of borders. Borders is just an illusion. It totally is, and it's an illusion because of resources in a monetary system. So one country will say, "These are my resources. If you want my resources, well, you're gonna have to come and you're gonna have to come into my country. You're gonna have to pay this tax or import tax. You're gonna have to do this. Those are your resources, and So we've set up the system of this and theirs, his and hers, and it's like created these artificial borders, bro. So when you move into a resource-based economy, there would be no borders. You won't need borders. So that's a real major thing.
Awesome, bro. Hey, just speaking on that. Coincidentally, I think we spoke about this. I think John Lennon spoke about that. Not so much on the song Imagine, but I remember watching a documentary on him and Yoko Ono, and he spoke about that too. He spoke about like what do countries have flags for? And you're pretty
Exactly.
much saying what you're saying, and obviously with that song Imagine too, he sort of definitely opened up a lot of people's eyes with the lyrics and the
He's totally right.
messages that he had in that song.
He was way
But
ahead of his time in his thinking too. And,
man, he
and
was.
just an analogy, I say this analogy to people, and I know it sounds a bit funny and crazy, but imagine if a say New Zealander, Australian, and let's say a Vietnamese jumped in a spaceship. We went to another planet civilization, and we met that civilization, and they said, "Where are you from?" I'm not gonna say I'm from New Zealand. He's from Australia, and he's from Vietnam.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah,
we're
yeah,
gonna say no. We're from this planet, but we haven't got to that stage yet. You know what I mean? So
yeah, yeah,
this is the stage we need to move to. We aren't there yet. We're in this kind of nations mentality, this nation's
yeah.
consciousness. So yeah,
On that note, bro. On that note, what about human greed, bro? Because after pretty much all the questions that I've asked you, and you're speaking about RBE, resource-based economy, for those you don't know or have just tuned in. But what about greed, bro? Because you could all maybe
yeah,
let's just say tomorrow we went into an RBE lifestyle, and it was just a straight shift. Everyone had to switch over their hats. But then you'd still have that greed hat from this world. What about human greed, bro? Is it a human nature? Is it human nature for us to be greedy?
yeah. That's a good question, and people say that a lot. They go, "Isn't it human nature?" Well, in actual fact, human greed is a learned behavior, and if you look back at that movies like Us Moving Forward, the first section, and you see doctors Robert Sapolsky, Gabor Mate, they actually talk about the science about human behavior. And if we are brought up in a scarcity, competitive environment, we will adapt to those environments to survive. And this is scientifically proven. Also, we keep maintaining a failing, obsolete economic system that has been handed down to us intergenerationally, and it's been maintained that way. It has never been just or equitable, and nor can it be. The main aim of the monetary system is wealth, property, and power, which only can be accumulated by a small percentage. And this is why the system is a pyramid. And this results in
Right.
everyone being out for themselves, predatory, parasiting off one another. Our current circumstances are merely the evolution of a monetary based system. It generates scarcity, poverty, what we call aberrant behavior, and the accumulation of wealth at the expense of others and our environment. So, greed, dishonesty are all learned patterns of behavior
Behaviors.
which are
Yeah.
actually strengthened or reinforced by our upbringing and the social structure that perpetuates these symptoms endlessly. And these patterns of behavior are not inherited human traits or human nature, as most people have been taught
Mm,
to believe. If the environment remains unaltered, similar behavior will reoccur. When we come into the world, we basically arrive with a clean slate as far as our relationships with one another is concerned. Now, any judgment regarding undesirable human behavior serves no purpose without an attempt to alter the environment that creates it. In a society that provides for most human needs, constructive behavior would actually would be reinforced, and people who have difficulty interacting in the community would be helped rather than imprisoned. I mean, in a monetary system, we imprison people because of their behavior. And we think it's because it's human nature, and actually, it's because they were actually born and bred a certain way, and so their behaviors are the way that they've actually become.
Yeah.
And so, in a resource-based economy, if this happens, people will be helped rather than imprisoned. And in fact, there will be no prisons in a resource-based economy. There wouldn't even be any police. You wouldn't need to. I know it sounds weird, but that's it. And focus on the root cause, basically, which is the socioeconomic structure itself, the monetary system. Human behaviors are shaped by environment. As I said, this is scientifically proven by people like Professor Robert Sapolsky, Dr. Gabor Mate. The symptoms will only increase in this current monetary system because people fail to realize the root cause. We need a new social design which will eliminate these symptoms to begin with. And I'll give you an analogy. It's like ants. So your ants go under your fridge all the time, and you can keep killing the ants. But if you don't actually remove the spilt sugar or whatever it is under the fridge, they will just keep coming back. They will just keep coming back. So that's pretty much what I'm saying.
Amen. Yeah.
So we can keep killing the ants. That's what that's symbolic of just dealing with the symptoms. But if we don't actually take the sugar away, we're not going to deal with the root cause. So
funny you say that, bro. It's funny you say that. I've instilled with our children when it comes to ants. There are times they really used to be prolific, and I used to always see them trying to spray them and kill them. I said, "Nah, man, just don't kill them. They're just hungry."
yeah,
I mean, like at the end of the day, just don't leave all your sweet stuff hanging around benches, and then
exactly.
they won't be hanging around. You don't kill them. It's not their fault.
No, it's not their fault. And you can keep killing them; they'll keep coming back.
Yeah, well, it's funny too, because when my daughter said to me last week, she looked at me, she said, "Dad, there's ants there." She looked at me and she goes, "They're just hungry, eh, Dad?" No, yeah, they are.
Exactly. They're just hungry,
Yeah,
man.
just
So,
hungry.
yeah, when you look at the science points out the facts that human beings are shaped by environment. The use of money is in global use no matter where you go, and money is socially paralyzing. That's another word, social, or another phrase, socially paralyzing, that it creates static institutions, it restricts development, perpetuates the stopping of change. And stopping of change is what I said before, emergence. We need to keep updating our knowledge and actually basing our system on the current information at hand. And we still hold on to these outdated structures which hold no relevance to basically present day knowledge. And I'll give you an example of that, and that is what's happening now in New Zealand. So the CDC, the World Health Organization, have come out now and said new information, which is that the infection rates are actually lower, if not the same, as the normal flu. So there's no need to lock down. And the Labour government, New Zealand, they are not looking at that information. They're still locking down. They're still putting restrictions in place. And this is what I mean. So the knowledge that's coming out now, today, is not being updated. And so they're still using their processes based on information maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And so
maybe Jacinda will do that after the voting's finished. No.
yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the same thing. Maybe after the voting's finished. So yeah, when we look at money, money was created thousands of years ago during great periods of scarcity. The purpose, as I said, was a method of distributing goods and services based on labor contributions. We are more advanced today in our technology. We can provide for all of the people on the planet, and in saying that, money is now, obsolete and outdated. And I'll go back to a quote from a very famous futurist named Buckminster Fuller, and he said that you can never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And that's pretty much what a resource-based economy is trying to do. They're trying to make a new model so we can make this old model obsolete. And
a question for you, but it's a land down the track. It comes back to what you spoke about. But
no worries.
Is this just a communism system?
That's
Would,
yeah.
would that be fair?
I get asked that question a lot too, and because people will automatically think, because that's all they know. People only know about the things that they've learnt and the things that they've seen,
Right.
and no one
Yeah.
spends enough time to actually investigate things like a resource-based economy and how it was started and where does it come from and all that kind of thing. So in its context, no, communism, it's not communism. Actually, communism um, was not actually derived from the needs to preserve and manage resources efficiently. Communism in theory and practice was based on what they call social and moral relativism, which was culturally specific, not environmentally specific, which is what a resource-based economy is. A resource-based economy is to be environmentally specific for
Right.
the well-being of our environments and for the people. So communism was more associated to cultural. And also communism had armies, they used money, and the Communist Manifesto called for workers' revolts because it had no working alternatives. In contrast to communism, a resource-based economy calls for the total redesign of cities, transportation, distribution, manufacturing, recycling, infrastructure, basically a whole new structure to produce abundance of goods and services for everybody. This is achieved through automation and optimized infrastructural efficiency. All basic societal, personal, ecological needs are accounted and provided for at the outset according to the latest scientific assessments and managed at a system via cybernetic feedback loops. I'll talk a little bit about that later on, bro. Now, humanity's scientific knowledge and means of production have evolved well beyond what is needed to make this a reality. But it all begins with testing a prototype and not a wish and
Right.
not a revolution. So the communism, as I said, we go back to the Communist Manifesto. It called for revolutions, and as I said, they had money, they had armies. So resource-based economy does not have money, does not have armies. It's not about revolting because of work revolts or anything like that whatsoever. So it's not a communist system at all. It's totally something different. And another point I want to talk about is I talked with Jacques Fresco, and he told me that the idea of a resource-based economy came to him when he visited the Pacific Islands, and he saw the Pacific people, how they lived, how people in the village would go out fishing, they'll bring back the
Share.
fish, and they'll share it. They'll share it with everyone else and they knew how to sustain. They knew how to look after the land. They knew how to look after the resources. And so he
Right.
observed this. He stayed there. He observed it. And so it was, the indigenous First Nations people that this idea has come from. The other thing too is that it's just implemented now with our technological know-how. So it's using our ways of old, our ways of the indigenous, and implementing what we know now in terms of our advanced knowledge, technology, implementing it together to produce a efficient system that can benefit everybody in transparency. That's the key, in transparency, so people can
Right.
see what's going on at all times. There's no hidden agendas. There's no global elites. None of that whatsoever. And so, yeah, it sounds like a utopia.
Well, I was just going to ask you that. So then, would this be deemed as a utopia? I guess you could put it.
Yeah, well, a lot of people say that, and I think I talked about it in one of our previous podcasts. As people go, man, it sounds like a utopia. I get all the resources I need. I get, access to a vehicle if I need. And I said to them, yeah, if you want to play golf, you go to the sports center where the golf equipment is. It's like a library. You get the equipment, check it out, use it. You don't have to take it with you and then store it at home and let it sit in the cupboard. You don't need any of that anymore. So you use these things, you take it back, and then someone else can come and use it. That saves producing lots and lots of that same product. People can use these things. It's kind of like Lego. You can actually change and upgrade things like in a Lego type system.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
it, and it makes it more easy. I mean, I moved house if I was to move, I moved house when I was back in New Zealand. Man, all the stuff I took, all my shit, all my crap, man. You know, I had like truckloads of stuff. I don't want to be doing that, man. You know, I want to go to, you know, here in Vietnam, you know, I stayed in apartments here where it was already furnished. And that was brilliant. That
Oh
was
wow.
awesome. So, you know, they had
Yeah.
everything. So you get electricity power, but then you get, you know, the beds here. They get even the sheets, the
Oh
pillows, the
wow.
cutlery. You know, your oven, stove. Everything's all here. You just pay a cheap amount. You know, $50 a week, and that's you. You got your apartment. You know,
Wow.
that's imagine that in a resource-based economy where you wouldn't need to go somewhere and take all your stuff with you. You just take your essentials with you. Like a laptop, you might have your own laptop because you're working on it constantly. Um,
Yeah.
but then, yeah, you go to a place and things are already kitted out for you. I mean, that's awesome, and you can live like that. So, getting back to a utopia, no, there is no utopia, and actually, there's no such thing as a utopia, and there's no such thing as a finality as we know it. Example, there is no best laptop. Next year, they're going to make something that's smaller, more powerful, more faster. We are always evolving and changing, as I said before, emergent. So we are always learning new things, discovering new things, discovering new knowledge. And so, you know, things will be updated. A resource based economy, I would say, is better than what we have now, and it's better than a monetary system. I think the kids of the future would create something better than a resource based economy. So, this is what I'm saying. This is the thing we have to get into, that there is no utopia. And, you know, the children, as I said, the children of the future will create something better than what we have now, or even better than a
Mm.
resource based economy.
So, what about the transition then, bro? Like, I know there'll be a lot of people asking right now, like, how do we get to from where we are now to the destination of having an RBE?
Yeah, so that's kind of like um, a real popular question too. Like people go, how the heck do we get from where we are to where we want to be? And you know, in a way it's a bit of a hard question to answer, because you're kind of like people are kind of like leaving it up to us to decide how we should get there,
Right.
when pretty much we've just got the, you know, the idea for this resource based economy, and it's actually up to all of us to actually decide, well, how actually are we going to get there? How do we get there? And I would say it's going to be quite painful. It's a painful transition, I would say. I want to go back and talk about the Great Depression of 1929, when banks failed and people were laid off. Things seemed hopeless for people. Those conditions back there brought about new organizations to address many problems, everything from socialism, communism, technocracy. They produce social awareness on a large scale. These conditions are sometimes referred to as biosocial pressures, or the march of events. So biosocial pressures are stuff that will actually make people will have to transition. If they don't transition, pretty much they'll die. So at present, people are not well enough informed to devise a relevant and workable social system through rational methods. So a resource-based economy will not be installed by today's political leaders, who are not appointed to change things, but actually those political leaders are there to keep things the way they are. Pretty much. It is only through the failure of existing social institutions and political incompetence that people will seek other possible social alternatives. They are mainly motivated by severe conditions that threaten their safety and existence. No nation today is about to give up its sovereignty for a social arrangement that has never been tried. Therefore, it will take a social breakdown to stimulate the search for alternative social designs. And this has been the case throughout human history. So, what I'm saying, bro, is that things are going to get tough for people. People can see that economies will collapse if there's going to be an economic breakdown. People are going to starve. Only then will people actually look at alternatives, and it will probably take something like that to happen. A resource-based
Mm.
economy cannot be put into practice on a global scale until the economic systems of the world fails to provide for the needs of the people. That's what I'm pretty
Mm.
much saying. And what will bring out the collapse of the world's monetary systems is firstly the infusion of automation and the outsourcing of jobs. As I said, technological unemployment
Yeah.
is taking over people's jobs. People are going to be rendered incapable of work. Therefore, they're going to lose their purchasing power, so they won't be able to buy the necessities of life. If they don't buy the necessities of life, they're going to go into poverty. And this doesn't include, this also includes doctors, engineers, because those can all be automated too, to be honest. I mean, I saw a robot doing surgery on someone. I was going, holy shit, that's going to render surgeons
It's
jobless.
it's it's really ironic that you say that now, because here in New Zealand, it's very small, but like I've seen a huge change, and I know it's COVID orientated, but like actually no, even prior to COVID, you could still automate and make an appointment. I even got to the point where I could send a message to my GP. I
Wow.
could send a message to my GP before even seeing you, and paying $15 for her to give me a prescription for some Panadol, which I very rarely get doctors today. That's what they do. But yeah, it's even to the point you got an app, and now I can log in, make an appointment without even have to ring them now. So yeah,
Exactly. And I mean, even the motion picture industry is going to be generating computerized people and what we call
I bet.
now deep fakes. You got deep fakes now. So you've got these deep fakes. Example, the latest Star Wars movie, you saw Princess Leia because she passed away. So they had to use a deep fake to use as her in the movie,
Right,
and it kind of
right.
looked like her too. I was like, wow, that's amazing how they've got her, using her in this movie. So they're using deep fakes in movies. So many TV personalities are going to be replaced, and so this breakdown is already well underway on a global scale. It's just happening incrementally, but it's gonna, I feel, slowly ramp up. I would also say the loss of purchasing power to millions of people due to a crisis such as the corona crisis. So that's rendering people jobless. I mean, you look at the unemployment rates
Definitely.
now in New Zealand with the crisis happening, businesses going under. Lots of businesses in Vietnam. They said that 2 million people now are. 2 million new people in Vietnam have been unemployed because of this crisis, the corona crisis.
Wow.
And so that's rendering people incapable of acquiring the basic needs. So fundamentally creating what we call psychosocial stresses, leading to suicide and the like. So suicide's going to ramp up. I mean, I think New Zealand's got one of the highest rates of suicide, especially for our
It
youth
is.
in
It
New
is.
Zealand,
Yeah.
So the transition will probably be very hurtful and painful time for people as they come to terms with the effects of how insane and outdated this current monetary system really is, as people have been born into it, and as I said, it's been ingrained into them from a psychological intergenerational programming level. And so while these drastic conditions will help produce the motivation for social change, no individual or organization has actually laid out changes or necessary which are necessary on how to bring them about. Our current system is not working. Unless people are aware of or knowledgeable about what is needed, they will continue to repeat the same mistakes: war, recession, boom and bust, hunger, poverty, and much unnecessary human suffering. So, what I'm saying is, things will just continue. If people don't look at an alternative or transition, things will just be the same or even ramp up to the point of, as Peter Joseph sees, extinction.
Yes. Well, hey, bro. I guess you pretty much covered this last question. What are five attributes of this RBE system? I mean, like you've pretty much covered all of them, but
Okay,
I guess,
cool.
yeah.
So yeah, that there are five major attributes of this resource-based economic system. You can find more details of these attributes in a book by Peter Joseph called The New Human Rights Movement. So let me just bring that up on one of the screens here for people to have a look. So that's the new human rights movement by Peter Joseph. So people can check that out and find out more details about not only these 5 attributes, but also the information that I talk about today. So the 5 attributes are firstly, automation. So in a resource-based economy, automation, labor automation. This means the conscious reduction of human labor for income roles. In a resource-based economy, we don't want people to work, man. We want people to do what they want to love doing. If you can imagine, when was the best time that you had fun in your life? I would say it was when you were younger, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. And did you have to work when you were younger? No, you didn't. Mum and dad
Really,
did.
I did, but yeah, I
Okay,
did.
I
Yeah,
know
but for
you
the
did
most
in a
part,
way,
no,
but
I
I mean,
didn't.
you had your resources actually supplied for you in a way that was
Right.
kind of like a touch of what a resource-based economy would be.
Yeah, yeah. Good point.
So
Good point.
you had free time to go out and play with your friends, to go exploring, to go on your bike, to get up to no good or whatever it was that you did, you know. And so the first one, as I said, the first attribute is automation, reducing people's work, to produce, to reducing people to work and getting people to do the things they want to love doing. And it's just common sense, and also it's part of the given trend which is happening right now, that automation in a monetary system is taking over people's jobs, and it's going to be dangerous in a monetary system, automation. But in a resource-based economy, it's welcome because people have access to the resources of life. People have their basic needs taken care of. So and the thing is that we want to free people and help them achieve their highest potential. So the first one is automation. The next one is access over property. Access abundance is what we call it. And so we want to balance that towards access and away from ownership. Ownership and property are foundational to the actual market economy, the monetary system that we have now. This idea goes back to the philosophical work of a guy called John Locke. However, things have changed since the time of Locke, and our high technology society is now being hindered by the tradition of ownership, proving it wasteful and impractical. I mean, you look at the indigenous people of the world, especially in Maori, for instance. We don't say we are the owners of the land. No, we are the kaitiaki. We are the guardians of the land. We guard the land to look after it, to sustain it. That's the mentality. That's the conscious level that we need to be at in terms of this property and access thing. And this makes sense. In an economy like today, information development leads to new products sold for profit. And so, actually, let me go back. Let me go back a bit. So, getting back to John Locke, as he mentioned before, his idea of ownership, and it's proving wasteful, impractical, and technically, inefficient. Now, the general idea of everyone owning one of everything is irrational for a species sharing a finite planet. Yes, we are not on an infinite planet, we are on a finite planet of resources. And the fact is, very few goods are constantly utilized over time, with some goods, such as cars, dormant the majority of their time. And you look at, for instance, people go to work in their cars, just one of them every morning. They go park their car up for the day. They don't use their car. So they jump back in their car when they finish work at the end of the day, and then they go home. In a resource-based economy, you have access to a car. You can use the car to go to where you want, park it. Someone else can jump in their car and use it. Someone else can be using a car and they'll drop it off somewhere, and you can use their car after them. That's how it is. So the cars are used constantly in a resource-based economy. Things are being utilized efficiently in a resource-based economy, and it's going to be much like a sharing thing, like a library. So if you go to a library, you get a book, you take the book out,
Yeah.
take it back when you finish using it. that's pretty much it. That's what we want to use these things. I mean, resources, we don't come into the world with resources, and obviously when we die, we don't take those resources with us. So why not use the resources the best and efficient way we can while we're here? So the third thing is open source contribution, making all industrial and scientific information freely available for everybody. This could be deemed the cultivation of collaborative commons, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's inventions. The market economy, monetary system treats ideas as property to be owned and sold. And so you have these terms like copyrights or intellectual property. You know, people want to copyright their works, copyright their stuff in a monetary system, and rather than in a open collaborative development. So this makes sense in such an economy as a monetary system, because information and development lead to new products or for profit, assisting market survival. So it's all about market, the market share. And so in a resource-based economy, you wouldn't need to have intellectual property. You wouldn't need to copyright something. In fact, I'll give you an example, bro. It's like I come up with an invention. It could be, say, to make a camera. Then you come along and we collaborate. You have your ideas and you add your ideas to that. We share, we collaborate together. And the thing is, when that invention is done and created, it's made available for everybody to use. So everybody benefits from your invention, rather than people hoarding that intellectual property right and saying, that's my idea, you're not getting it. And you're limiting access to people sharing or experiencing that invention that you have. So in a resource-based economy, open source, which comes back to collaboration. The fourth thing is, let me just do this quickly, is localization. So localization is about regaining efficiency and reducing waste by locally producing as much as possible. So we've got products in New Zealand that we can actually produce there and use there. We don't need to import things from China and use stuff from China. We don't need to import things from America. We can use what we have in our area locally and use that for extraction, production, distribution, and recycling. And they should be organized in the closest proximity to the population group in need. And this may seem like common sense, but mostly because of the competitive pursuit of lower labor costs, commodities and goods are actually moved all over the world. In fact, a meal that you have on your plate has traveled pretty much around the world once, they reckon, which is pretty weird. So, you know, you've got like vegetables that come from India, you've got, you know, potatoes that would come from somewhere else. We need to keep things local. So localization is very important. And the last thing is what we call network digital feedback. Now, this can be a bit scary for some people, bro, but it's referred to as what they call the Internet of Things, IoT. It's about networking technology and sensors to optimize information flows, using the internet and instruments to measure, track, and feedback information. Some ambitious ideas are what we call smart cities, where various components of the urban infrastructure become networked for rapid response. So people actually are a bit scared, and they're kind of like thinking that what I'm talking about here is going to be have an impact on them in terms of surveillance. But actually, this is one thing that people need to understand, is that this is different to surveillance. Surveillance of the population for profit in a monetary system is different to what's going to happen in this resource-based economy. Actually, it's not going to be surveillance of the population. In a resource-based economy, surveillance of people will be deemed an insult and inappropriate. And there simply would be no reward to survey the people at all their private life in a resource-based economy. Now, in a monetary system, people have been surveyed. I mean, you've seen a few of those videos now. I think there's one actually out on Netflix called the Social Dilemma. So you got that, and you've got another one called The Capitalist something or other. It's a YouTube video out there. So they're actually using, you know, surveillance as a way to profit off people. to get money.
Yeah.
So in a resource-based economy, no, there will be no surveillance. The only feedback that we get are from sensors that are placed in areas like in the ocean, in the countryside. We want to determine how much resources we have in a specific area. Example, if you have an invention, bro, and you want to find out, okay, I want to build such and such, but I need these resources. You can quickly tap. This is in a resource-based economy. In a resource-based economy, you can easily tap into the computer. Oh, I need these resources. Are they available? The computer will feedback to you. Yes, we have these resources available. You can create your invention because our sensors have picked up that we can get these resources. We can extract this from here. We have that here, and we can create what you need for your development of your project or for your invention. And that's pretty much this system, network digital feedback. So it'll give us live, real-time feedback from the environment about things that can help us. Things that can help us. In no way will it be used to be used as surveillance on people. And this is another thing that people and I should have added it as a question, because people come to me and they say to me, "Oh, technology, I fear technology. I fear the Terminator style technology." And I mean, you probably have heard that too.
Yeah.
People fear
Definitely.
technology, but to be honest, technology are just extensions of ourselves, and they are there to help us. What actually gives people these thoughts of technology being harmful and crazy is a notions of motion pictures like the Terminator, and all those technology movies that have all these machines killing people. And the second thing is the abuse of technology. It's not the technology, it's the way in which the technology has been abused and used. And it's been used and abused to profit off other people, to parasite off other people, and to predator off other people. And that's why people fear technology. It's not the technology that's the problem. We don't say that our washing machine is going to attack us. We don't say that our car's gonna give us a karate chop or anything like that. No, those things are there to help us. So yeah, and the educational system in a resource-based economy would be such that behaviors of surveillance would not be necessary. So surveillance, no, there would be no surveillance. So just wrapping it up, bro. Each of those 5 things that I talked about, the first one being automation, access over property, open source, localization, and this network digital feedback are more efficient mechanisms to achieve a higher productivity and the least amount of waste and environmental impact feasible. And the logic is pretty much no different in principle from the practical decision to reject using a manual screwdriver in favor of an electric screwdriver. Now people use electric screwdrivers. I mean, now and again you'll probably use a manual one, but it's pretty much along those same lines. So all of those attributes and what I have talked about are also described in Peter Joseph's book entitled The New Human Rights Movement, as I've got on the screen there, so people can go and check that out. And also, if people want, they can also check out the Zeitgeist Moving Forward movie. They'll see Dr. Robert Sapolsky, Gabor Mate in the first section talking about some of the psychological effects and a lot of stuff about the resource-based economy. It'll even talk about the transition stage and how will it look. So that's pretty much it. And I'm just gonna leave you with a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. He pretty much said, "We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. When machines and computers, profit motives, and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered." And the future is our responsibility. If we fail to accept this responsibility, others will do our thinking for us. So that pretty much wraps up some of the main questions of a resource-based economy. I know it was quite long-winded, and if people want to check out Zeitgeist Moving Forward movie. They can see a bit more about it, and that book, The New Human Rights Movement. So yeah, I mean, you may have some more last minute questions. If you have, then fire away,
pretty good,
man.
but I'm pretty good. But will you put up some? Could you put up some links for anybody that's keen to check out those
Yeah,
links towards?
so now I've as I said, there's some links here. People can just go to YouTube and chuck in their Zeitgeist Moving Forward. There's the movie there. People can watch for free. The New Human Rights Movement on YouTube as well. People can see that. There's a full version of the support book there that Peter Joseph talks about, and yeah, the hierarchical needs thing. People can just Google that and check that out. And also, I recommend people to check out the Venus Project. The Venus Project is Jacques Fresco's project. I mentioned him before, met him before, and he was the one that coined a resource-based economy. So he passed away at 103, I think it was. So
wow,
you can check out his
good innings.
Yeah, he had a real good innings, man. And he was actually friends with Einstein. So him and Einstein worked on ideas back in the day.
Wow.
And yeah, he died a few years ago, and I was glad to spend time with him in New Zealand. Actually, it was really good to pick his mind, and he kind of got me into this phase of thinking. My thinking, man, just the lens became a lot clearer about things and questions that I had. So yeah, people can check that out and know more about a resource-based economic model. And I hope one day, man, that we can transition towards it. I hope in my lifetime I can experience that transition, and
definitely, man, definitely.
As I said, the transition is going to be painful, and what that would look like, I have no idea what that would look like. I'm hoping it's going to be a peaceful transition, if it is. So yeah, that's it, man.
No worries. For the viewers out there who have either just tuned in or have tuned in, you can go to www.raglanradio.com or live stream on 98.10. We'll be replaying this podcast on Friday between 10 and 12 a.m. So awesome to be back in the matrix, bro, and talking about some awesome subjects.
Cool.
Especially the subject tonight too, the RBE is. I've just got a whole new perception on the whole thing. So
awesome, brother.
You almost want to feel like you want to go there tomorrow.
Yeah, right now would be fantastic. Thank you.
I reckon, man.
Let's do it.
Awesome, brother. Well, we'll leave you to it, bro, and then until next time we catch up. Any thoughts on your next subject that we're going to be talking about, or?
No, not really. But I'm keen to talk about anything, so I'm keen. So we'll flick some ideas through you during the week, I guess, and we can talk about the different topic and maybe a list of topics that we can talk about and, share with the people out there so they become informed and, get them to be the judge.
No worries. And if anyone's got any questions for Wiri about the subject tonight, feel free to drop some comments, and then I'm pretty sure you'll be glad to answer anyone's questions.
Yeah, I also have a Facebook group and a Facebook page, You Be the Judge World on Facebook, and on YouTube, I've got a YouTube channel, You Be the Judge World on YouTube. They can see all the videos and some of the podcasts that I've done and check out some of the information that I talk about as well. And yeah, people have any questions, fire away either on Facebook, YouTube, or here on Raglan Radio. And man, even if they have any topics they want us to talk about in the future, man, that would be cool too. We can talk about topics that are even exotic topics that not many people talk about, or the mainstream media don't want to talk about. Hey, we'll talk about it. I'm keen to talk about it, so let's do it.
Same. Let's do it.
Thank you, bro. Thanks for your time, man.
Awesome, bro. No worries, man. Take care.
Cheers, bro. Peace.